Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ganyan, thank you for stopping by. Today I'm gonna be talking about Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. If you know me or if you watched any of my other videos, then you know that I like to give a chance to games that didn't get as much love as I think they should have gotten, or underrated games that I think are better than the internet thinks they are. If you're interested, I made a lot of other videos about games like these, but today we're gonna be talking about the most underrated game so far that I talked about, Dark Souls 2. Everyone always rates it as the worst one in the Dark Souls series, and I think that's kind of unfair. So today I'm here to try to convince you to play this game if you haven't already. It's really fun, and I'm gonna tell you why. Before we really get into the video, I just wanna point out that I'm here as a fan. I'm not a developer, I'm not VatiVidya, I'm not Ziostorm. I can't explain the mechanics of the game and the world design and the level design as deeply as a developer can. And I'm not here to do that either, I'm just here to give my opinion and hopefully try to convince you to play the game if you haven't already. So keep that in mind, don't take my opinion too seriously, and if you have other opinions, please let me know down in the comments, I'm more than happy to listen to them. And just to make it clear, in my head, I don't know if you see it the same way, but in my head the Dark Souls games and FromSoft games in general are split into two separate categories. Basically, I look at the games before Bloodborne as one thing, and games after Bloodborne until Elden Ring as another thing. Because Bloodborne really changed the game for FromSoft. Their games became faster, more brutal, and just requires a lot more focus and fast reaction timing than the other games. At least that's the way I see it. So when I say that Dark Souls 2 is one of the better FromSoft games in its category, I don't mean that it's better than Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne, my favorite game of all time, or even Elden Ring. Elden Ring was one of the best games that released in the past year, and I honestly love it to death. But personally, if we wanna get to that, I prefer Dark Souls 3 more than Elden Ring, but I'll make a video about that later if you're interested. But for now, if I compare Dark Souls 2 to its more or less equivalent Dark Souls games, I would put it in the same category as Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls, and I would rate it better than both. And I know that might sound as sacrilege to most people listening. If you love Dark Souls 1, I mean, most people love Dark Souls 1, and everyone says that it's better than 2 and Demon Souls. In my opinion, it is better than Demon Souls, but it's not better than Dark Souls 2. And I honestly think that a lot of people are affected by nostalgia and by the internet in general when they decide which game is best in the FromSoft category. For example, Dark Souls 1, I played it recently. It's a really fun game. I finished the DLC in it. I played the DLC for the first time now, and the game I played it years before. It's really fun, it still holds up good with the remastered edition. The gameplay is fun, the bosses are kind of okay, there are very high highs like Ornstein and Smough, and very low lows like Pinwheel or the Butterfly boss. But in Dark Souls 2, in my opinion, they kinda fixed that. There are some bad bosses, but in my experience, most of them are okay or better than okay. At least in my opinion. Another thing that I think Dark Souls 2 does best is the areas. I really think that the Dark Souls 2 areas are better than the Dark Souls 1 areas. I think most people are affected from Dark Souls 1. The first half of the game is the best part of the game. The Undead Burg until Ornstein and Smough is just amazing, but after that, with the Tomb of the Giants and Lost Izalith, those locations really fall short of the other locations in Dark Souls 1. Especially the DLC, I love Oolacile, and the township of Oolacile especially, it's one of my favorite locations in Dark Souls 1. But the rest of the game kinda falls short of that. Dark Souls 2, there are a lot of good areas. There are some bad areas like the Frigid Outskirts, which I still didn't play, but I know that it's bad. I've seen a lot of gameplay of it. But at the same time, Dark Souls 2 has a very high quantity of just amazing areas that I love to explore. Especially the DLCs. We all know that DLCs in Dark Souls games are the best part of the game, but in Dark Souls 2, Let me tell you, they really improved in the game. The game itself is okay, but when you add the DLCs to it, it's amazing. The three DLCs are all distinct, have different enemy types in them, have a different environment, and they're all huge. I would rather explore one of these DLC areas than Ulusil, even though I love Ulusil, but I would rather explore these areas in Dark Souls 2 than Dark Souls 1 DLC. The boss, yes, the bosses aren't as good as Dark Souls 1. I mean, it's really hard to live up to Artorias. He's just famous for a reason. So it's hard to live up to him, but if you compare it to the rest of the game, Dark Souls 2 DLC bosses are not so bad actually. I kind of enjoy fighting them, they're really fun. But the main attraction in these DLCs is the locations themselves. These three lost cities in the DLCs, even if you don't enjoy the game itself, if you play the DLCs, trust me, they're gonna make up for the whole game. It's just that good. The DLCs are really amazing. And if you played Dark Souls 2 but you didn't experience the DLCs, trust me on this, go play them right now because they are some of the best areas in all of Dark Souls. And all of From Software, to be honest. So be sure to check the DLCs out if you have the time. And the second thing that I wanted to mention that I think Dark Souls 2 did better than Dark Souls 1 is the inventory system. As a whole, the inventory of Dark Souls 1 worked fine and it was good for what it was, but it wasn't visually appealing and it didn't work as smoothly as I would have liked it to work, and it was a little too hard to understand when you first start the game. On the other hand, Dark Souls 2 inventory is really beautiful. It reminds me of the Borderlands inventory system, where you open your inventory and you can see your character standing next to it, so you can see how different pieces of equipment affect the look of your character, which is another thing that I like more in Dark Souls 2, the look itself. I think that fashion in Dark Souls 2 is a lot better than Dark Souls 1 fashion. They really added a lot of good looking armor sets that weren't in Dark Souls 1. And there are some returning armor sets from Dark Souls 1, but all in all Dark Souls 2 has better fashion. And like I said, the inventory works better and it's more smooth and it's just more fun to use. And sticking with the idea of little changes in Dark Souls 2, I wanna mention that they added the ladder slide in this game. So if you go back to play Dark Souls 1 right now, you can slide down ladders. In Dark Souls 2 you can, and in all games after it you can. But in Dark Souls 1 you have to painstakingly wait until you go down ladders step by step instead of just sliding. I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's kinda like that God of War meme where Kratos pushes the chain down and then drops himself and then you have to climb up again. If you know what I'm talking about, you understand my point. It's just a little thing that helps the game feel more smooth and run better and just be a better experience all in all. Another little thing that they added here, I mean I wouldn't call it little, it's a really big change, the torch system. I didn't know this back when I played Dark Souls 1, but as far as I know, Dark Souls 1 doesn't have torches. It has a skull that you can light up the room with, and the headpiece thing that you can light up the room with, and some stuff that help you see in the dark, but it doesn't have an actual torch that you can carry in your hand and light up stuff, like all of the other FromSoft games, except Demon Souls, I guess. Dark Souls 2 does have a torch. It's not like Dark Souls 3, where you just hold it and it's usable. You have to light it with a bonfire enabled, and it enables you to basically use it as a normal torch. But it's a really nice change, because there are a lot of dark areas in this game. There's a lot of dark areas in all of FromSoft games, and now with a torch that they added in Dark Souls 2, it's really just more intuitive and more fun to explore the world when you can actually see what's in front of you, unlike in Dark Souls 1. And I think that's a really big change, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to mention real quick the one big negative that everyone keeps bringing up with Dark Souls 2 is the movement system. A lot of people have a problem that the invincibility frames are linked to a certain perk that you can upgrade, and they think that it makes you lose skill points. So instead of putting skills in dexterity, for example, you have to put it in this specific skill so that your invincibility frames are better than Dark Souls 1. In my opinion, that wasn't really that big of a deal. I basically pushed it up to 23 or 24, something like that, and it felt more or less like Dark Souls 1. So the rolling was basically like Dark Souls 1 for me. But in my opinion, the bigger issue when it comes to Dark Souls 2 is the camera. I don't know how to explain it specifically, but you can see it in the gameplay as well. The camera just like jerks around way too fast, even when I'm not trying to move it fast. Dark Souls 1 and other games from FromSoft always felt smooth with the camera. The camera gets stuck in certain locations, true, but the overall movement of the camera always felt nice and smooth. In Dark Souls 2, it kinda like goes fast and then slow, and it's really confusing. But really, other than that, I didn't have any major problems with Dark Souls 2. It's not as iconic as Dark Souls 1 because it wasn't the first one. But other than that, really everything in the game is better than Dark Souls 1. It looks better, it feels better, except the camera problem that I talked about. And other than that, it's just a better game, a better made game in my opinion. The locations are more varied, they're more interesting as well, especially with the DLCs. Like I said before, the DLCs are amazing. But even without the DLCs, the locations are good. The game is better, bigger than Dark Souls 1. There are a lot more locations. I had a similar moment to what I had in Elden Ring. If you played that game, you know how it felt to just to go around and think that you're almost done with the game, and then you stumble upon a little like elevator, and it turns out you have a whole 10-hour area hidden away that you didn't know about. Moments like those exist in Dark Souls 2 to a very lesser degree, but still they exist. And I really like that because I didn't have that in Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 felt a lot more linear than Dark Souls 2. In Dark Souls 1, when you start the game, you can go two ways basically. In Dark Souls 2, you have about 3 or 4 ways to go when you start the game, which is already a lot more variety than Dark Souls 1. The bosses are more varied, there's a lot of bosses, more than Dark Souls 1, that's for sure. I don't know the exact number but it's more than Dark Souls 1. I know that for sure. Some of them may be repeats, but again, no one had a problem when Elden Ring did that. Or at least no one had a big problem when Elden Ring did that. Dark Souls 2 does the same. And also, something that connects to Elden Ring, the dual wielding. There are dual wielding move sets in Dark Souls 2, which by the way we didn't have in Dark Souls 3. They removed it after Dark Souls 2 and they brought it back in Elden Ring. Also, we have the dual bladed sword things like Darth Maul used in the first Phantom Menace movie. It's just fun. It's not that special, but it's a sword with two sides, so it's fun to use and I love it. Makes me feel like a Sith Lord. Also in Elden Ring they have it. Elden Ring actually has a lot of Dark Souls 2 influence in it. If you play this game, you're gonna notice the similarities. So basically what I'm trying to say, my whole point from this video, if you played Dark Souls 1 and you liked it, don't listen to the haters online, try Dark Souls 2, try to play it. If you didn't like the game itself, try to play at least one of the DLCs. The exploration in the DLCs is amazing, I love it. I love every second of the DLCs. It's really fun. But that's all I have to say about Dark Souls 2. I know I can't do it justice in this short 15-minute video. I hope that I did it enough justice to try to convince you to play it. If I did, let me know down in the comments. Other than that, let me know what other games you want to hear about. I know that the channel hasn't been getting a lot of uploads. This part of the video, by the way, is gonna be updates about the channel, so if you came for Dark Souls 2, thank you for sticking around for so long. I appreciate you, and I hope you liked the video. If you did, leave a like down below, and maybe subscribe if you wanna see more. So, in regards to channel updates, I wanna try to upload once every week. If I can, it's exam season again, so I'm kinda busy with university. But if I'm not, I try to update the channel at least once a week. So let me know what you're interested in, what kind of games you're interested in. The Borderlands world isn't going so well right now, it's just full of drama and stupid shit, so I'm not really that interested in it, at least until we get some actual good news for Borderlands. But I doubt that's gonna happen anytime soon. So let me know what other games you wanna hear about, because I've been playing a lot of different games, and I'm actually enjoying it lately. So let me know, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everyone who subscribes to the channel with so little updates and so little consistency. So truly, thank you. And as always, if you liked this video, let me know what you think down below in the comments. Be sure to like it, subscribe, share it, whatever you want to do. And as always, have a nice day.